Hi, and welcome to the Goalkeepers podcast. Here with your host, Coach Art. And today on the podcast, we have Coach Bailey Martin. I believe out of Florida. Correct me, Bailey. Where are you from? What do you do?
So I am in Naples, Florida, down in Southwest Florida. I run a goalkeeper academy right now, along with my dad and another coach of mine that actually coached me when I was coming up, and we created DBR Goalkeeper Academy. We really wanted to fill a void because I came up through this area also, and there really wasn't any solid goalkeeper training. There was guys who were here for a few years or something like that, and they just kind of went away. And I knew that was something that we wanted to kind of fix. We wanted to give the kids something that they can rely on, something they can count on that's going to be there to help develop them, to hopefully get them onto the next level and help them get on to college. I think we've done a good job with that. We've been going for about 4 or 5 years now. I mean, I stopped playing 5 years ago, right when I left high school. I didn't play college. And I just moved right into coaching, and that's kind of what we've been doing for the last 5 years down here.
And what was the transition like for you as far as like stop playing? Because it almost sounds like you just stopped playing and then you went right to coaching. What was that transition like for you?
So, luckily, I really had a good support system that kind of got me into coaching originally. And it was a coach that we had that kind of ran our younger kids, like our U10s and lower. And he created a young coaches program where he just kind of brought in some of the older players to kind of get them their coaching licenses and get them their grassroots license and get them into coaching. So I decided to do it. I think my dad was coaching those younger kids at the same time. So they brought me in. I did some goalkeeper coaching. I really enjoyed it and thought I did really well with it, and everyone thought I did well, and that was kind of the start. And I
Were
think my
you?
last
I'm sorry. Were you a keeper growing up?
yes,
Okay.
very
Okay.
much so. I was a keeper. My dad actually never was. My dad was a setter back for the longest time, but I think once I kind of really took on being a goalkeeper, he learned as much as he could and just continuously progressed with me to kind of understand coaching goalkeepers and getting into that side of it. And that's really how it's been. I've always been a goalkeeper. Couldn't do anything else.
So let me ask you this, right? Because this is a little bit of a controversial topic. Um, so can you learn to coach goalkeepers if you weren't a goalkeeper? Right? It almost goes back to that question of can you coach top level players if you yourself weren't a top level player, right? Like I was never a top level player. So my opinion would be yes, you can, but I'm wondering from your perspective, what do you think and what do you think that's like?
Oh, it's funny because we always think about it the opposite way when we talk about it. We're like, oh, these guys that were top players, they come in and think they can coach, and some of them really can't. I think that it takes a certain type of person to be a coach, and if you understand the position and you take that time to really learn it, if you're a good coach, I think you could do anything. I mean, I could coach a striker if I really took the time to focus on that, and I think my dad really took it on, and we're a good combo right now. We got a great thing going on. So
Yeah, no, and I love the attitude. I love the smile. You obviously seem like you're very happy, very energetic. So I'd probably want you to be my coach, right? Because you can tell the energy, right? Now, what does this path look like for you next couple of years, right? This coaching path, as far as so first of all, I think it's great that you're working with your dad and you build an academy. And I think from even from just that perspective, it makes things a little bit easier in the sense that there's alignment with family. He's already putting you on the path with somebody that's already very experienced. So what does that look like for you? What do you think that what does coaching look like for Bailey in the next couple of years?
Well, I just quit my club, which was a big decision for me to make. I was training 4 nights a week on like a very strict schedule, and I just didn't like a strict schedule. So that's why I really wanted to focus on my goalkeeper academy. And the reason being is I've got one kid in college right now, and he kind of came to me after he was in college, but I've got a few years. I think my youngest, or no, my oldest goalkeeper is 05 right now. The older kids, I don't know, they got different things going on right now, so they don't come to me. But my 05s is what my big project is right now. I really want to push these kids to get them as high as they can possibly get to. And if another opportunity arises, I'd really try to consider it. But I've also just graduated from college and started a civil engineering job also. So balancing my work right now and also coaching and trying to get these kids as good as I can, I think that's the long term goal right now. And if anything comes out of it, great. But I think I just want to get these kids into college, get them off, and just continue to train them and see where I can get them to.
Yeah, I think there's such a high value, and I think super important to take that type of ownership, right? Because I think a lot of times, a lot of coaches and simply, I hate saying it, show up, do the work, and then leave, and then it's like, and it's a job, and I
Mm-hmm.
get it. It is a job. It is a job, and we do get paid for this, right? And a lot of coaches, we're not asked to emotionally become vested in the players or in the process. We're not like,
Mm-hmm.
and you really want to see, if you want to say it black and white. But I think it's another level when you have such a different type of respect for the player, for the sport, and the development of people, that now you're really vested in. Okay, this is what I want to do. This is how it's going to look like, and this is what we're going to accomplish. And we're not going to leave. We're not going to abort the mission until we see it through. And I think that I've seen that in a lot of coaches. I've also haven't seen that in a lot of coaches, right? That there's different coach, like everything else. There's good and they're bad. But certainly there's, I know one of the lessons that I had early on was one of my mentors, got a promotion, refused to leave the club, refused to take the promotion because he wanted to see his team through the end. And that speaks very highly of what his level of commitment was to that team. People may debate, was it dumb? Was it, did he miss an opportunity? Probably. He didn't care. He cared about that team and that process. So no, that's great perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's talk about your topic this month. What's your topic, or this, what's your topic? What are you going to talk to us about, and what do we have to look forward to in our presentation, in your presentation?
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about kind of the communication in a training scenario and a game scenario, right? What are you saying to your teammates during a training, and what are you saying during a game? What are you saying before a game, during a game, after a game, right? Some of those kinds of situations where it's maybe a little bit more personal, right? You can say certain things to certain people, and that's kind of the second part is how do I talk to certain individuals? Is there someone that I can really kind of beat up on and really lay into? Or is it someone that I need to put a arm around and kind of say, all right, let's go?
Yeah, and Coach Tony Vu and I were talking earlier, and this came up, right, where as adults we see that, and we in a working environment know how to maneuver that. Certainly, depending on what kind of job you deal with, more people, you have to be better at reading and communicating and stuff like that. But as a 13, 14-year-old goalkeeper, that's very difficult to. That's a very tough ask. So how do we make it? We as coaches, how do we make it a little bit easier for them to understand what how, that one that level of communication is needed, that you need to be able to communicate, and two, you have to know when to push and when to pull, because that's a skill in itself. So how do we simplify that for our players?
So for me, everything starts in training, right? If we can start to get them to kind of be comfortable with their teammates in a training situation, they'll know how to interact with them, right? And you start to get cliques at that age group where certain people don't really interact with each other. I mean, it's natural. And the goalkeeper just needs to bridge those. And I think that's the biggest thing is the goalkeeper doesn't need to be well liked by everyone, right? But they need to have some sort of decent relationship with every person to know how far can I go with this, right? Or do I need to kind of take that step back and really kind of let them have their space, or just build onto them, right? Start to build them up a little bit. And training, I think, is the best environment, not goalkeeper training specifically, but I think in their team environments, right? Talking to people before practice, after practice, right? Really building those relationships, I think, is one of the biggest things.
How do we help those players build those relationships? Because a lot of times, right? I mean, forget the fact that they're teenagers, that they're just starting to grow and they're just starting to come into their own. And you're right. Then you have the whole situation with the different cliques, and there's certain players that are like, looking to push on to the next level. There's the other group that's like, you better thank me that I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back to your O5s and your O6s, those older age groups that sometimes become a little distracted because now there's a social life, and now there's other, it could be other sports, other activities. Um, so there's a lot of different personalities in one team. So how does a goalkeeper, because a goalkeeper has also that ability, so just like it can bridge,
Mm-hmm.
together, they can also separate and create gaps in teams, right? Simply by not adapting to different styles and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So as players, um how do we make that easier for goalkeepers, right? So I'm a field player, you're my goalkeeper. What can I help you with, and how can I help you bridge gaps instead of, creating a gap for myself and the team?
I mean, being open to criticism is one of the biggest things. I think a lot of times we are our harshest critics, but we need to also be open and take on that criticism take it with stride almost, right? And work together to kind of get to that ultimate goal, right? We want to win the game. We want to be in the right position. We want to win those balls. And just trying to kind of bring everything together and not really caring what some people have to think. I think for me growing up, I was a terrible communicator, like bad. This is actually this is actually a huge thing for me because I'm very introverted, right? As a goalkeeper, I think people are a lot more extroverted, but they don't really get that on the field. And you don't want your anger to come out, which is one of the biggest things with my younger goalkeepers right now is anger goes out one way and then anger comes back the other way. And then we just kind of get that divide. So as a field player, right, if I see my goalkeeper kind of going off or seeing some of my other players going off, I just want to keep them kind of locked into the ultimate goal of we're a team still. We're here to win. We need to get this together.
Yeah, no, and I think that obviously, that means as coaches, it's our responsibility to do that, to help them out, and also to recognize that they're still kids at the end of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, we are our own harshest critics. So I always cringe a little bit when a player makes a mistake, and then a coach gets right on that player for that mistake. Because it's not like the player doesn't recognize they made a mistake. Like, um, so, or even other teammates get on a player for making a mistake. So I think just being a little bit more conscious about what that message is after whatever interaction. Um, we have to teach that to the players, and I can't. If I, as a coach, right, expect you to react a certain way, I can't react a different way and be like, "Well, do as I say and not as I do."
Yeah.
So now, how important is it to have a few key words as a goalkeeper, right? That not only the keeper knows, but also the field players understand. Because I think that having, again, you don't have to have an encyclopedia or a dictionary, right? I mean, you could, but if you have 3 to 5 phrases, 3 to 5 words that now everybody can react to them like right away, how important is that for goalkeepers and field players?
So we want to be succinct, right? If I'm going to give you information, it needs to be quick because most likely that ball's either coming towards us or it's going in on goal and it's got to be a split-second decision. And again, that goes back to training. Can we work on those keywords in training? Can everyone understand that I say something and they're going to know exactly what it is, just like you said, right? And if we can get that in training and we can take that time to kind of practice it, just like you practice everything else, that's really where it comes in. And then once you get into the game, it's just natural, right? It can be one syllable, whatever that word is, right? But you want to keep it succinct. And sometimes if you don't have that, then you give information, they don't really know what's going on. And they may ask, what does this mean? We don't have time for that. It's really got to be something that's a well-oiled machine. It's got to be practiced. I think that's the biggest thing, is that's where the training versus game communication comes in. Is training's more of that experiment ground. Let's get this down, go into the game with our few key phrases, and I can give that information to my defenders in one word than three.
Yeah, and I mean, I think from my perspective, um, like you're saying, right, practicing that in training, making sure that you're using those phrases at practice, right? First of all, you have to come up with those phrases,
Yeah.
maybe as a team or with the coach, and now that's communicated. And again, because it's very easy to start to, especially in the moment, you're nervous, you have the anxiety, you're stressed, the crowd, and now you're trying to communicate something to one of the players, and now it's easy to just keep rambling on and and if that happens multiple times, the field players are just going to start to tune out. So we want to make sure that as goalkeepers, the field players may not understand everything that we say when we say it, but as long as we do our job, eventually they will get it, and it makes things easier for them. Now, the other part that you are going to be talking about was the part like after games.
Mm-hmm.
I win 4-0. My buddy got a hat trick. I had a top corner save. Coach is gonna buy pizza. Life is good. What's that atmosphere like compared to we just lost 9-0? Coach is like, you know, um, quiet, not responding, right? So now all the teammates are pointing at each other. How do you handle such diverse situations after game? Because I think that's a very difficult part of growing up and competing.
Going through a minefield after a game where you've gone down 4-0, right? You don't want to say something that's going to trigger a reaction, really. You don't want those harsh reactions. And it comes down to kind of knowing who to talk to, right? Who's that person that I can come over to and put that arm around and, hey, we're going to get them next time. Or that person that maybe I'm a little bit closer with and I can give a little bit more criticism to, but in a certain way that doesn't come off as, hey, you suck today. I
Correct.
know no one really wants to hear that, but
Correct. Well, and the other part of it too, right? Like it's very easy to get emotional in like right after a game, even if you lose a game and then you're gonna go out to lunch, right? Or even if you don't, but you're on the group chat, right? So it's very
mhm.
easy to get emotional, and that may not necessarily be the best time and best place to start saying, "Hey, listen, like you should receive the ball with the back foot and take a touch foot." That may not be the best. Like it may be the best advice ever. Like your advice and your words might be like, "Oh, I'm completely on point." It's not going to matter if it's not said at the right time. So being able to read that is super important.
Yeah, no. When I still kind of worked with teams, we always had the 48-hour rule, which was, if you never heard of it before, parents aren't allowed to talk to the coach until 48 hours after the last game. So on tournament weekends, you're always going to get parents, hey, my kid didn't play enough. Let it sit for a little bit, usually 2 days for something like that. And then you go from there. And usually they get a different kind of perspective and they're more receptive to things that you need to say. So maybe immediately after the game, like you said, is not the time to say your touch was bad. You should have taken the ball this way, right? Let it sit a little bit. And then maybe you come into training and that same thing happens again. Hey, that's what happened to you on the weekend, right? We should fix that. Stuff like that. And you can kind of build on it the next week to go into the weekend or whenever your next game is and try to correct that after the fact, but you have that game as a real example.
And I will tell you, right, from coaching several years, in my experience, a lot of those, like exactly what you said, a lot of those mistakes get repeated over and over and over again, right? The person who has a bad touch or takes a bad touch with the wrong part of their foot tends to do that more times than not. So there will be plenty of opportunities to mention that maybe at a time where the anxiety and the stress isn't so high, right? So it's usually like training, you're like
Yeah.
pretty stable, and then it goes up, right, middle of the game, and then it comes back down, and you don't want to talk when you're here. You want to talk when you're here because this is probably where you're going to be more receptive to that criticism. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's really hard to take criticism during a game, especially whether it's your teammates or your coach. As a goalkeeper, you really want to keep it to a minimum on kind of criticizing your players, right? You want to give them that information to say, hey, we should have marked this guy up or something like that. But yeah, I think training is the perfect opportunity to kind of, if that happens again, it will happen again if it's a constant mistake. And we can kind of get it there in a low pressure, not much going on in a training session, right? A lot more focus on the touches. And that's probably the best place to address something that you've seen on the weekend.
Yeah, no, I agree, and there are again, right? There's a time for everything, but all right. As we kind of wrap it up here, again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your insight. Looking forward to your presentation. Is there anything that we have to look forward to when you are presenting? Is there anything else you could tell us a little bit about your presentation and what you're working on?
I mean, personally for me, I think I said a little bit earlier, I was nervous with this because I was never someone that was very good at articulating what I want to say, especially when I was younger and I was on the field. And it's something that kind of comes with age and kind of the maturity. Once I started coaching and I kind of understood the different aspects of it, I still play a little bit, but it's a completely different environment. I mean, I'm talking all the time, giving that information to players. And if there was anything I would have said to my 12-year-old, 13-year-old self, was just don't worry what other people think about what you say. You know you're giving the right information. You just got to do it. I think that's the hardest step is you just got to be able to communicate and know what to say. And that starts with us. And we want to give that information to the goalkeepers. So I think that's something that we need to look forward to is giving you guys that information and hopefully setting you up for success on the soccer field.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I like that. I like that. And I appreciate the fact that, like, for example, that it's that we know it's important for so being a goalkeeper is is a sometimes um lonely place to be, right? And it's almost like you're an individual in a team sport. But it is a team sport, and we all have to manage to be able to communicate with each other, get along with each other, and the best save is the one we don't have to make, right? Uh,
Always.
so again, thank you again, and that's what we're trying to do here, right? With the presentations on the weekend, all the social media stuff that we put out, the YouTube channel is just trying to get that information out for the goalkeepers to have success on and off the field. So Bailey, again, I appreciate your time, appreciate you being here, and we look forward to your presentation later this month.
Awesome. Thank you, Art.